Hello, my name is David Vess. I'm a composer, and this is a video about score study. This is something that's really important, especially if you are a younger composer. This is just such an essential way to level up, to get better, to learn from what other people have done and implement that in your own music. So what is score study? I remember not really knowing. I was a performance major in undergrad. I was a tuba major. And then for my master's, I switched to composition. And I remember all of my teachers saying, oh, you got to study this score. Or, oh, you haven't heard of so-and-so? Well, you need to go study this score. You got to look at this. You got to look at that. And at this point, my exposure to score study was really just Roman numeral analysis in music theory class. And while there's nothing wrong with that, that's not really going to help you if you're going to study something like Lutoslawski 3 or Seriaho or whatever. So, I didn't really know what that meant, and I didn't feel like I could ask anyone. It was one of those, this has gone on a little too long and I'm a little too afraid to ask. So the goal of this is to kind of give you some ideas for how to get started, right? Give you some tools to just start this journey, because really, it's such an important thing, and there's literally just so many ways that you can do it. There's no one way to study a score. There are thousands of ways, but I just want to break it down and make it easy for you to just get started, because honestly, that's the biggest thing. So what is score study? Well, score study is taking a look at a piece of music that has been written, and you are learning about, you're making connections with what the composer decided in terms of their orchestration, with their harmony, with their phrases, with their melodic structures, their thematic structures, motivic structures. I mean, you're starting to learn all of these different things when you are studying a score. And depending on the type of music that you're studying, you're going to be learning and dealing with very different things. So, why is it important? Well, it's so you can learn what has worked before. So you don't have to go through the same sort of trial and error that, other people have worked. You naturally, in the music that you have grown up with, that you already care about, you already hear things in it, whether you consciously know it or not, that you really like or dislike, or that taste right. And conversely, you also find stuff that maybe doesn't feel right. I don't like how that landed, or there's just something off in this. Well, score study allows you to see what the music sounds like. See what the music sounds like. So it's just an essential thing. So let's get into it. There are really kind of two ways that you really want to think about how you approach a score study. The first one is understanding that there is always a why. There is always a why, and that's your job, is to figure it out. Why, right? So what I mean by this, for every single note, every single articulation, every single orchestration, every single word that is in a score is a conscious decision made by the composer. It's there for a reason. It never just magically appeared. It was chosen. And score study is really trying to get at the why. Why did they orchestrate this here? Why did they put the flute in the low register here? Why does everyone else have an eighth note staccato, but then the basses have a quarter note, instead? Why? What's going on? What are they thinking? So there's always a why, and you're trying to find that out. Now the next thing is the really important one, which is that scores are really complicated. They're really complicated. And you can't just pick up a score, read it for a little bit, and then close it and say, well, all right, call it a day. I've studied that score. It's way more complex than that. You have to do it in layers. It's a layered approach. I don't mean to make it like a Shrek reference, but it really is kind of like peeling an onion. It really is. So you're not supposed to get all of the information in one shot. I used to think that score study counted when you would put on a recording and then you would just open the score and just read it as you're listening. And there's certainly nothing wrong with that, but it can be so much more be so much more deeper than that. So yeah, that's really kind of it. It's just such a complicated thing, and it's going to take layers, and ideally you're going to really get to know a score by going through it multiple times, putting different lenses on each time. So that's really it. You're here to figure out why did they make the decision that they did, and you understand that you're going to work at it in layers. Okay, so let's actually get to the practical stuff. Let's actually do it. So the first thing that you're going to do is you're going to get a score that you love. You should ideally pick something that you like, that you have some interest in, that for whatever reason it tastes right, you're attracted to it. There's just something about it. You might not have the words yet to describe what it is, why it's interesting to you, and that's okay. That will come with time. I know for me, one of the first scores that I ever studied was The Planets by Gustav Holst. I remember when I was growing up, there was a Reese's commercial that had Jupiter in it for some reason. I don't know. I don't know why, but I always remember being like, wow, what is that? That sounds really good. And then I figured it out that it was Jupiter, and yeah, it just kind of started a little bit of exploration for me. But pick something that you like. So how do you do that? How do you physically get it? Well, there's a couple ways. One, if you are a music student, you probably have access to some music library at your university where you can get something literally for free. You can take a look, you can rent it, you can take it out of the library. You might have to read it there. I don't know. Everyone's situation is different. So if you're in university, definitely connect with your music library if you have one. If you don't, that is a-okay. There's many great pieces, especially from the classical era, especially the Romantic era, and even early 20th century works that are available really inexpensively on like Amazon or things like that. Like this is a Dover edition of The Planets. I'm pretty sure this thing maybe cost me like $10 with shipping. I mean, it's really inexpensive. Same with like the Magic Flute with Mozart. Some scores, especially more recent ones, are going to be a little more expensive. Like I remember I was doing a conducting thing with Shostakovich 10, and this was not $10 with shipping. So it just depends. But there's a lot of really great standard rep that is really inexpensive, that's just available relatively cheaply on Amazon. Now, if you don't have the means to do that, you can always check out IMSLP, which is a fantastic site. It has really kind of everything there for free. They're electronic downloads, they're PDFs. I will say there is something special about having the physical score and being able to turn it and especially write in it and make observations, but free is free. And you got to do what you got to do. So the last thing I would say is you run into the case where there is a piece by a living composer that you're like, I'd really love to get to know that. I really think that would be really interesting. And you should just email her. Just send her an email. As 9 times out of 10, composers are going to be ecstatic that you are interested in what it is that you have made. I mean, it's probably the greatest compliment you can get. Hey, I'd really love to study your score. Oh my God, yes, of course, and they'll probably send it to you. And worst case, if not, nothing changes. They just don't get back to you, and then you move on. So anyway, but however you do it, get the score that you're really interested in. Pick one and just go. Don't wait around, just pick one and go. Okay, so now that you have it, here's what I recommend for getting like right to it. I want to acknowledge there are so many ways to do this. We're going to break it down, but the first way, probably the most helpful way for me, is you want to go and touch the impactful moments. You want to go and touch the impactful moments. What do I mean by that? You're going to go straight to the part that you're interested in, that you wonder about what it looks like. Why does it sound this way? It sounds good. I want to just get right to it. So for me, I wanted to know what the opening of Jupiter looked like. That was a part I really loved. I really loved the buildup of the strings all the way to the first orchestral hit. And with the trumpets kind of zooming out from that, I really wanted to know how he did that. So I went straight there. It's not like I can't come back to the rest of it later. It's just you want to go where you feel it, where you're really like you want to get something. And that's the reason I say that is because you already care about it. You are going to just have an easier time just soaking up that information. So just do it. Just get in there. Just eat it. I mean, it's going to be great. So touch the impactful moments. So for instance, if we're looking at the beginning of Jupiter, right? It starts in the second violins, right? And it's actually a really simple figure. We've got this little, it's a 3-note pattern. It's just E, G, A. And what he does is he repeats it in a sequence, right? He creates a hemiola. It's a 3-note pattern in a 4-note rhythm, right? So now, as soon as he does that, every beat there brings in a new layer. So this is the first half of the second violins, and the second half come in on the A, C, D. It's the same type of thing, right? And then the second half of the first come in, and then lastly the top part of the first. And they all are just kind of humming together. They're all offset from each other, and that's what makes it really shimmer. But what's really interesting is that I play these notes all the time, right? I mean, it's the E above middle C. It's not whoa, spectacular or really anything that interesting, but it's the overall effect that gets created. So that's what I mean by this, is it's so, that kind of pattern is really not that complicated, actually, and I know how to do that now. So that's what's, really interesting about, just cracking this open, going straight to a part that you care about. You can literally immediately learn something that gives you instant impact in your music. Okay, so after you've touched all the things that you are really excited about, and you've kind of gobbled it up, like sort of, quickly and excitedly, or if you don't know where to start, here's what I would recommend. Again, there are so many ways to do this, but something that helps me just get started with the process is literally turning to page 1, starting at page 1, and I look at it and I just try to notice something interesting. That's it. It's usually something orchestrational, or it could be harmonic. I don't know. But you just want to notice something, right? And then I write it down in the score. I see that, he's using this interesting, string technique here, or, she orchestrated the tuba with the piccolo for this particular line. That's really interesting. That's totally up to you, but it's a really easy way to just look at it, engage it, and then you just go to the next page. You have an objective, and it makes it just so much easier to just go through each page and start getting it in layers. So if I'm looking at the very first page of the planets, right, we're going to see a bunch of G's, right? All the strings are doing the collegno, which if you didn't know what it was, you might see that and think, what are they doing? That's not the plucking thing. That's not the bow thing. Well, they're hitting the string with the back end of their bow. It's a wooden thing, and that's a whole other complicated conversation that we need to have. But anyway, you see that. But also, if you take a look, how many harps are there? Well, there's actually 2 harps. And if you notice what's going on, it's kind of odd, right? It's kind of odd. Why? We've got this, one of them is starting with the high G and going low on the pattern. That kind of motion. While the other one starts in the low and goes high. So, why? What? That's weird. Why not just write... Well, the reason is that sucks to do on the harp. If you were trying to do the repeated pattern over and over again in the low register for like a full minute, because that's how long that pedal point lasts, that you're going to destroy your harp player's hands. So it's actually, I would have never thought of that. Like, I didn't know that. I'm not a harpist. I'm a tuba player. That's about the farthest thing from the harp. But, I see this really smart decision, and we're just on page 1. So that's what I mean by it's so important. Like, just open the page, just notice something. I mean, there's all of these different interesting things that are going on in whatever score that you have picked. So you definitely should, and you should definitely touch it at the piano. That's so important. We all use the piano to some degree or another, and it's just really powerful to see that, that's the same octave that I use. Those are the same notes. It's the same thing that someone else chose. So yeah, that's what makes it special. So that's what I'd recommend, is just notice something. You don't feel like you have to start right away with a harmonic analysis. That's great. There's nothing wrong with that. But sometimes it's easier to just kind of have a looser approach. And so I really recommend that. So as you go along with this, you'll probably start to find other things that you become interested in. Like as you notice something, oh, like this is a really cool chord. Well, how did we get here? How did we do it before? And it will probably send you off into all kinds of different, different directions, which is great. That's what it should be. It's not really, there's not like a strict way you should do this. It's more about what can you gain from it. Remember, at the end of the day, coming back to this idea of layers, studying scores isn't really about like looking at it and all the information just, comes into your brain or whatever. It's not really about that. It's about deepening the relationship that you have with the work. That's what's important. That's what's going on. So ideally you're gonna learn about a work, and then you will be coming back to it all the time, the rest of your career, and you will find things in it. As you grow as a composer, you will find more and more detail that you didn't notice before. And that's what's really exciting. That's what's really interesting. So after you've done, after you've started this process, there's so many different filters that you can use to do it. I mean, definitely consider doing a harmonic analysis. I mean, yeah, that's gonna be different, once you get, out of the Romantic era into the 20th century. It can get a little intense to do that, and that's great. You should absolutely do it. You should absolutely look at how they are structuring their themes or their motivic structures or whatever. I mean, it just depends. It depends on the context, but harmony, melodic material, your phrases, just the orchestration, that's a whole ball game right there. Even just taking the time to just study the string section, or even more specifically, just study like the violas, cellos, and the basses. That's a whole complicated layer of what's going on. So there's so many ways to do it. But what I think that is the most important is that you just get started. There's no right way to do it. There's no wrong way to do it. There's just needing to do it. There's just needing to get started. And that's honestly the hardest thing is, oh, I don't know how to do this, and I don't know, I just won't start today. Nah, just do it. And don't feel like you have to study for hours at a time. There is something to be said, for studying really intently for like 15 minutes. Even that, like, a couple times a week or every day or whatever, that's really impactful. If you're really taking the time to really engage with it, I will take 15 minutes of score study over an hour of just like having the recording on and flipping pages and just kind of doing it passively, not really engaging with it. And at the end of the day, that's what's really important, is that you engage with the material, that you're really looking at it, that you're trying to see it and trying to question why. So at the end of the day, just get started. Don't not do it because you're, it's weird or different or scary or whatever, Don't be like me. Don't take forever to actually get into it and find your own method. So yeah, just get started. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. I would really be curious if you could leave me a comment. How do you approach studying scores? Have you done anything before? What's worked? Is there something that I've missed? And I really would be interested to hear what you have to say. I'm going to read every comment. So yeah, that would be really helpful and valuable to hear from you guys about that. So till next time, see ya.